You're welcome back to Thursday's football show. Nathan and Kev in studio. 53106 is the text number. So, Southampton have a new manager. They have confirmed the appointment of Ralph Hasenhuttl, a Austrian 51-year-old who is going to take charge for the next couple of seasons following the sacking of Mark Hughes. Delighted to be joined on the line by Rob Daly to discuss the appointment. Evening, Rob.
Evening, chaps.
So, it's an interesting appointment, yet again, from Southampton, going back to probably a situation they were in 3-4 years ago when they were looking outside the obvious and just looking for survival and maybe planning a bit more long term. Ralph Hasenhuttl, he made his name really with Leipzig, leading them to second place in the Bundesliga. He's been out of work, though, since last summer and since he left Leipzig. Does this look like a good match for you?
Yeah, very much so. I'm very impressed that Southampton went with him. It is, as you sort of mentioned there, a bit of a hark back to what Southampton were doing in terms of not just player recruitment, but in terms of coaching recruitment. Pochettino was a bit left field at the time. Ronald Koeman was a coach a lot of good teams are looking at. I feel like the appointment of Mark Hughes was not in line with the model that Southampton had in place for some time. So I'm very excited to see Ralph Hasenhuttl in the Premier League. I sort of touted him as a top six manager a couple of years ago with what he was doing with Leipzig, and I think it's a good opportunity all round for the club and for him, as he was saying in his presser today.
Rob, you said left field, but Pellegrino was fairly left field, I think, when they went for him. I think that was the thing that we were looking at overall, to think, well, now they've gone back to, you say, a left field appointment, but is it not, what I'm trying to say is, are they not necessarily going to say, well, look, we're not going to go for someone that's actually going to be a little bit more stable for us? Mark Hughes was a little bit, I would say, a 50-50 amongst supporters even at the time. So why have they gone for him above others then?
No, you make a good point, and I would put forward the case that Hasenhuttl's exceptional circumstances for the following reason, that he can build a team in two models, really. With Ingolstadt, the team he was in charge of before Leipzig, they were bottom of Bundesliga 2, effectively the German Championship, got them promoted and kept them in the Bundesliga by playing very solid defensive football, back four, midfield five, counter-attack set pieces. And then with Leipzig, he showed how he can play high-pressing, expansive football that we've seen from the likes of most notably Dortmund and Liverpool under Jurgen Klopp. So I think he went to Southampton because they talked a lot about how impressive he was in the interview. And I think he said, look, I can get you out of trouble one way and we can build the other way once we're safe. And I think that's what he's going to do, to be honest, with the Southampton. I think they'll be safe now with him in charge, to be honest.
He's been described, and probably somewhat lazily, as an Austrian Klopp because of the high-intensity style of play. But what you're saying then is maybe we shouldn't expect that straight away at Southampton, that he is quite open-minded. He can go in, look at the group that's in front of him and look at alternative ways of playing, something that suits, probably for now, just survival for the next 6 months, and then you sit down next May, June and plan for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think he'll be pragmatic, actually. The question, I suppose, is whether he feels he has enough of the season left to instill the pressing style, the attacking style that he'd like to see. I was at Wembley last night, and I'm sure he was impressed by someone like Nathan Redmond. You know, in his Ingolstadt team, he had very quick wingers, the likes of Matthew Leckie, who's now at Hertha Berlin, who was very good on the counter-attack at being able to relieve the pressure when Ingolstadt was sitting back so deep. The other player I wanted to point out, actually, I was thinking about it today, was James Ward-Prowse. So Ward-Prowse is making maybe his second start of the Premier League season or something last night. He wasn't really involved, and his set pieces were excellent. They caused Spurs real problems. Southampton actually could have had 2 or 3 goals in that final half an hour. Now, when he was at Ingolstadt, Ralph Hasenhuttl team defended a lot and relied a lot on crossing the ball into the penalty area. It was about winning free kicks, corners, penalties, and that's how they'd win games 1-0, 2-1. And in that team, he had a very good player to do that in Pascal Gross, who we now see at Brighton. He was a brilliant set-piece taker. We now see in the Premier League how many assists he gets, how many chances he creates. And I wonder if he saw Ward-Prowse last night and thought, he'll do for me, because James Ward-Prowse needs someone to not save his career because he's still a Premier League player, but to turn him into the player many people thought he would be, and I think Hasenhuttl might be that man.
And there's no doubt that Southampton have been massively hit with the players. That's been well documented over the last 4 or 5 seasons, but there is still some quality there. You mentioned 2 of them in Nathan Redmond and James Ward-Prowse, who, when they've been playing their best football, have been in and around the England squad. Nathan Redmond has an England cap at this stage, so there is something there to work with. I guess when jobs like this come up at this time of the season, so Mark Hughes is one of those many managers that's on this endless cycle of moving through clubs, and one of the reasons that a Sam Allardyce or Tony Pulis gets linked with Southampton is that they've proven that they can go in over a very short period of time and motivate players. And you look at Southampton over the last 18 months, and a lot of those players look like they've been drifting. Like, overseeing them recently, looking at someone like Ryan Bertrand, looks like he's been stuck at the party and all his mates have gone home and they've gone to a better place, and he's missed his chance. To try and get that fight back in the players, is that something he's shown as good as he can be tactically? Right now it feels, over the next month when they probably have 5-6 games, 2-3 days between them, has he shown enough about him that he can get in, motivate instantly a group of players?
Yeah, I think this is actually the primary comparison to Klopp. Above the pressing and above the style of play, it's the individual man management. He's a far more affable figure when he speaks in English. A bit like Thomas Tuchel, actually, when he speaks in German. He's actually a little bit harsh with the media, but when he switches to English, he seems a bit nicer. And I think that's the same with Hasenhuttl. This is a guy who says a lot of the same things as Klopp about in terms of man management, being close to his players, putting an arm around them. And Kevin's been in a Premier League dressing room, I haven't. But the last 3 managers, I think, at Southampton, I think it would be fair to say they weren't the most inspirational, motivational kind of guys in terms of correct me if I'm wrong, Claude Puel, Mauricio Pellegrino, who was also struggling a little bit with the language barrier, and then Mark Hughes, who didn't seem to be the kind of figure that they needed in that dressing room. So I think Hasenhuttl is the complete package for Southampton. I might be overselling it a little bit, but I think he can motivate that group of players.
Just something you said earlier about his job that he did at Ingolstadt, where he was a little bit more pragmatic. Leipzig far more open. Do you envisage? So you're saying that it might be a bit more pragmatic to start with. I just think immediately when you're saying that Pepe Mel, when he went into West Brom and he went in straight away and tried to play open attacking football, and they were getting caught out, and then he almost relied upon his coaching staff to change the system and go. I think Dean Kiley was in there and 1 or 2 others and said, look, we're going to play the same way. So do you think that is probably the way that he can actually build to this end of the season? Because I see he's got Cardiff, Huddersfield, West Ham this month, winnable games, I suppose, before the turn of the year. So it's an interesting one how he's going to go about it. But what's the message that he would be relaying to the board then when he's taking the job? Is it a long-term process, or is it an immediate plan to try and introduce his good attacking football?
Yeah, I think he came in with here's the next 2-3 months and here's what I'll do, and I'll be pragmatic and I'll get us out of trouble. And then I think he said, the next 3 years, you will see the type of football that I want to play. And I'll point to something else about Ingolstadt. When they were in the German Championship, when they were in Bundesliga 2, they did play open, expansive football. They got to the Bundesliga, and Hasenhuttl looked at his players and said, we don't have the money. They were backed by Audi, but there's bigger clubs in Germany backed by Audi get more money. And I think he just said, right, I'm just going to have to be a bit more clever here. It's largely the same group. And I think he just realised they just had to be solid. They just had to be rock solid. And I remember commentating on loads of games that they just won 1-0. Literally win a penalty, score it, and not concede. For me, and I don't know what you think about this, obviously Van Dijk leaving was a massive blow you say a massive blow. It was a lot of money in January. I think they do have problems at centre-back in terms of the actual quality there. I thought Ishida was very poor for the couple of goals against Manchester United at the weekend. Stevens has been in and out. Maybe hasn't kicked on as Southampton would have liked. I don't know if he's actually got the quality at centre-back, and if that will be, having looked at the game last night, because he was there at Wembley, he didn't pick the side, obviously. I wonder if that'll be the area he thinks, there's good central midfielders here. Højbjerg, Ward-Prowse, Stephen Davis can do a job. I've got wide players. We've got a couple of strikers when they're fit in Austin and Ings who know the Premier League. I've got a good goalkeeper. He's now part of the England setup. I think centre-back might be the area he tries to address in January first of all as well.
What is it that the board there at Southampton actually expect, though?
I would say this season, survival, isn't that it now?
Well, I'm just saying in general, because the change of managers that they've had over the last few years, I know that managers have done well and left, so it's been thrown upon them. But what is the realistic expectations for Southampton over 2 or 3 years, say?
I think what was interesting, what happened to Claude Puel, he got them to a League Cup final, mid-table-ish. I forget where they actually placed in the table under Puel. I want to say 10th to 8th, maybe. But the style of football rubbed the fans up the wrong way, as it has done a little bit at Leicester. I suppose a similar profile in terms of job, aside from the fact they won the Premier League title. I think it is make us a mid-table established Premier League side, occasionally reach for Europe, but play a style of football that we can enjoy. And look, they had Pochettino, who I've seen all of Spurs games this season. I can't believe what a great job he does, what he gets out of his players, the brand of football he gets. Spurs haven't been flying this season. They've still won 11 of their 15 league games and a third. I think there's an expectation to play a good brand of football there now at Southampton, given what we've seen previously as well.
And if he is given the opportunity to reinforce in January, does past history suggest that he has a good eye for a player?
Yeah, they were relatively shrewd in terms of the players they brought in. Leipzig as well. They obviously had a connection with RB Salzburg in Austria, so he had an easy route to very good, talented players. But they signed Timo Werner, who's now basically Germany's first choice number 9 when he was there. I don't, because Les Reed left, didn't he, last month, Southampton, as I forget what his actual job title was, forgive me. But I don't know in terms of the recruitment what the process is now at Southampton and whether there has been a complete overhaul. But he clearly knows a good player. He knows how to motivate players. When Emil Forsberg was not fit enough for his liking at the start of the 2016-17 season, he just didn't play him for the first 5 games, basically, even though he was their best player. And Forsberg came back into the team and racked up a ridiculous amount of assists. So I think he'll get more out of the players that he's got already. But I don't know who's making the calls there now. Forgive me, at Southampton. And I would give Hasenhuttl a degree of power in that respect.
From what you said there as well, and from a selfish point of view and looking at the Irish angle here, and Michael Obafemi, probably our brightest young talent at just 18 and did very well on his debut against Manchester United at the weekend. You mentioned Timo Werner. He's obviously not afraid to give young strikers a chance.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, I was really sad not to see Obafemi last night. Injured, of course, for the Spurs game. I think he might well have started up front. Manolo Gabbiadini did next to nothing leading the line. He will give young players a chance. And I think he'll look at Stevens and Ward-Prowse in particular and say to them, weren't you supposed to be the guys that maybe went for 30, 40 million 2 or 3 years ago? Everyone was talking about, especially Ward-Prowse. And I think he'll find a way to motivate those guys. And even Nathan Redmond, I was looking back when I was researching the game last night before commentating on it, the Pep Guardiola stuff and what Guardiola said, that famous clip of when he rampaged at him on the pitch. People know Nathan Redmond's underachieving. And I think that's the problem for Southampton, that there's just been a lack of motivation and the right energy in the dressing room, and some of those guys haven't lived up to expectations. They're all 24, 25. They've got to deliver now.
Just before we let you go, Rob, the way you're talking then about Hasenhuttl and where he could go with Southampton and the pedigree he already has, and he was one of the names touted potentially with taking over at Arsenal during the summer. I don't know how much was ever actually in that, but is your sense that this is a stepping stone, that this is maybe the next Maurizio Pochettino?
Well, do you know what was interesting? The thing I saw, the exact quote, I won't remember it, from Hasenhutl's press conference, but he said, "I'm here to make a name for myself in England." I think that was the quote. Forgive me if that's wrong, which suggests that he does have his eye on bigger and better things already. Look, they did push, when he was Leipzig manager, they pushed Bayern for the German title, coached in the Champions League. He's had a taste for that. And Arsenal had a 50-man shortlist for that job to replace Arsene Wenger. He must have been on that shortlist, or someone. There was massive oversight there. So I think Hasenhuttl, like many people who take over at Southampton, like Ronald Koeman did before, they see it as the job for the next job. But you have to do the business, because the last few people at St Mary's haven't done it.
Good stuff, Rob. Talk to you soon.
Cheers, guys.